Hi, everyone, and a huge thank you for joining us today for a discussion on learning to focus on the impactful tasks instead of every ask. The webinar will last roughly 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the Lead the Slack to answer some of your questions in the hashtag StaffPlus channel. We may also have time to answer a couple of questions live, so please do submit those to the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get to them towards the end if we can. So let's get started with some introductions. My name is Blanca, and I'll be joined today by Nayana, Sabrina, Maxi, and Jeffrey to share their experiences and insights. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself, but let's go in alphabetical order by name. Could you please answer in 60 seconds who you are and what makes you excited about being on the panel today? So Jeffrey, would you go first?
Sure. Thank you, Blanca. I'm Jeffrey Sherman, and I am a staff engineer at Active Campaign in Chicago. And I am super excited to be on this panel because I am very passionate about getting developers, mostly developers, but getting everyone to focus on what actually matters and producing the things that matter and kind of cutting out and just not doing the things that don't. So this is straight up my alley, and I hope I can deliver lots of wisdom and maybe learn a few dozen things or two.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And now Maxi?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Maxi Ferreira. I am a staff engineer at HelpScout. We're focused mainly on front-end infrastructure and web performance. I live in Los Angeles, in California, and I'm really excited to be here because this is a topic that I always struggle with a lot. So I'm very much looking forward to sharing my experience and also learning, most importantly, learning a lot from you all.
Thank you, Maxi. Next up is Nayana.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nayana Shetty. I'm a principal engineer working at the Lego Group in the marketing and channels technology cluster. And before you imagine that I'm working on creating the next fancy Lego set, no, I'm not. That's not the area I work on. I work closely with how we do personalization and how we do ethical data usage of our shoppers and consumers of our products. We are two principal engineers across a cluster of 400 people, and prioritizing what we work on is quite crucial to how we add value to our organization. And this is where I would love to share what I do, but also hear from the other lovely panelists that we've got here on this topic.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sabrina.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Leandro. I'm a principal engineer at Intercom, where I work with our customer support products, specifically our automation tools, and such as bots and things like that. I'm originally from Brazil, but as you can see, I moved somewhere much sunnier. I'm based in London nowadays. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I think this topic, as all said, like it's really dear to my heart, and it helped me in so many ways. And one of the ways is kind of helping me focus and keep myself motivated, because kind of having some kind of control, maybe not full total control, but some control with my time and the work that I do. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sabrina. And this topic is also very dear to me because I think it helped me to just stop thinking that I needed to be able to just do everything. Okay, so this is what we're going to be discussing today. And welcome, everyone. So in 2023, the focus on efficiency seems to have taken over everywhere in all the tech businesses. It is being described as doing more with less. But as I looked up in the dictionary, I stumbled upon the following definition. Efficiency is the quality of achieving the largest amount of useful work using as little energy, fuel, effort as possible. So this makes me think efficiency is more of being frugal about the resources and being intentional about where we focus our effort. So during our panel, we're going to be touching on some of the following themes. What approaches do you have for prioritizing requests? How do you avoid trying to do everything? And how do you delegate in result? How can you make sure your work is visible in a StaffPlus role? And last, how do you stay on track? How do you manage your time and measure your progress. So without further ado, we're going to kick things off with Nayana. Can you please tell us what techniques do you use for prioritizing?
This is always a hard thing, right? Like, how do you even prioritize things? The common thing that I do is identify the size and impact of any ask or initiative that I am asked to work on. And I often use the analogy of the rock, pebble, sand to gauge the size and impact of the work that I'm doing. While it's very tempting to pick up a lot of sand and fill your jar with lots of tasks to do, a good idea would be to start with the biggest problem, like the rocks. Pick the rocks first, and then pick a couple of pebbles, and then land on the sand. And you need all of the three types of these because you want to create impact, but you also want to build trust within your organization. So all of the smaller ones do help you build the trust. Also build your network so you can gain the wider context that you need to prioritize the right pieces of initiatives. And then don't be afraid to ask your leader if you're focusing on the right things. And a lot of times we forget to do that. Ask people, am I doing the right thing? A lot of times you do get a lot of insight from people around you. And then find opportunities to delegate when you think it's too much for you to do as a single person. And there are a small portion of people who are in StaffPlus or like quite senior roles in the organization, and find ways to not be the bottleneck, but the enabler for the tasks that you're doing. And this could be either by documenting everything that you do, and also enabling like communities and other ways of enabling the organization where you don't have to be in every single discussion or every single. So yeah, these are some of the techniques that I have been using.
Thanks for that. Jeffrey, you've described using the 5 whys framework for prioritizing. Can you tell us a little bit more of the detail?
Sure. So the 5 why framework, I believe it came out of Toyota in the 50s and 60s when they, said ask why 5 times to get to understanding. And the basic idea is, especially as an engineer, especially even when you get to the senior roles, people will come to you with solutions. They'll say, oh, I have this problem and I want you to build this thing to fix it. And that usually is not the thing that is usually a valid solution, but it's rarely the optimal solution that an engineer who has a firm understanding of the code would do. And so asking why you want to do this and keep going down until what is the business impact? What is the number that they want to move? And then rebuild back up based off of that number. So in terms of prioritizing, it's drilling in so that you know what numbers that you are supposed to be moving. And then honestly, the first thing you often are going to want to do is make sure that you can actually measure those numbers, right? If you're going to measure conversions, make sure you can measure the number of people at the top of the funnel, because you'd be surprised at how often you'll try to discover, that you're moving these numbers and you find out, oh, I can't actually measure them yet. If you can't measure it and you're trying to move it, you're never going to be very effective at it. So continually asking why until not only do you understand, but that whoever is asking you to do something knows that you understand is extremely important in terms of getting to the meat, to the bone of what it is that you're trying to do. And that makes you effective, because oftentimes you'll get things like, oh, well, let's make the logo a little bigger, or can we make the logo blue? It's the canonical joke. Maybe, like I'm not a graphic designer at all. I can make your logo blue, but what is it you expect that making the logo blue to do for you?
Thank you. Do you have any go-to phrases you use when you're going through that kind of why? Do you have a way of kind of gently pushing back and kind of managing potentially difficult, situations that people are like, but you can do it.
I often will not play dumb, but I will say something like, okay, I understand you want to do this so that I can build it correctly. Why do we, I can see a dozen ways to do this. why do we want to do this so that I build the right thing? And tell me more about what you expect it to do, because I could do it 3 or 4 different ways, and I don't want to do it in a way that only solves this very narrow request you've got and then just doesn't work for the rest of it. So tell me more about it. Like, what are we trying to do?
Thank you. We're gonna move to Maxi now, and it's all about saying yes. So why is there an opportunity cost of saying yes to everything?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that every time you say yes to something, to a new task, yeah, you're saying no to something else, right? You might be saying no to a different project, or to your time, or to quality, because now you have to spread your focus across multiple different things. And it's easier to see with the big tasks, right? With the big projects. Like going back to the analogy that Diana was using, it's easy to say no to the rocks because your jar is already full. You can see the rocks is already there. You can't possibly fit another rock. But it's the little ones, the sand, that is tricky, because it's always something. Maybe somebody asks you to review a document or to participate in a meeting, and it's easy to say yes because I can probably squeeze in another 2-hour meeting in my schedule. So I think also going back to what Jeffrey was saying about the whys, it's important to ask yourself why you want to say yes to something. Maybe you're glad that somebody came to you, that they thought of you, and you wanna deliver, of course. But maybe the project already has senior and capable people on it, so they don't necessarily need your expertise. And what happens to me a lot is I agree to participate in a meeting or review a doc because I want to be aware of what's happening. I want to have that context. But maybe there is an effortless way for me to get that context without having to review a 60-page doc. Maybe I can read a summary and get the same level of information. And in cases where you have to say yes, because maybe you're the only person who can do this, it's good to think about using this as an opportunity for mentorship or for coaching another person so they can do the job as well as you can. And the last thing I'll say is that you want to find a balance. Of course, you don't want to start saying no to all the asks all of a sudden. Maybe that means that you went too far. But it's just important to reserve a portion of your time to be able to say yes to some of these tasks, because you want to say yes, you want to be helpful. But the important thing is that you're more intentional about what you say yes to instead of just saying yes to everything.
Thank you, Maxi. I think you've reminded me in Tanya Riley's book. She talks about different kind of shapes of almost calendars for staff engineers. Some people like to be like way kind of involved in everything, and that's how they operate. But other people need a bit more headroom because they like to go deep into things. So it's depending how you are as well. Oh, next we're gonna move on to Sabrina, and because Maxi was saying that the importance of asking what you want of this thing, it ties in really well, because you have shared before the importance of having your own goals. And how do you tie having your own goals with prioritizing requests?
Yeah, it's a great point. And Maxi was saying about being intentional as well. I find it having my own goals is a way for me to be intentional. And kind of going back to Diana's point of the rocks, like it's about setting at what my rocks are and what are the things that I'm going to focus on. So it's about being proactive about my work and my time. If you don't do that, you kind of just get flooded with requests or urgent tasks and things that are coming your way, and you need to prioritize one by one instead of thinking like a big picture of what's the context, what are the other things that you can do. The other reason that helps, like stepping back and thinking about my goals like that, is to don't forget the kind of not important, non-urgent tasks that we need to do, like long-term thinking, strategic projects, things that are kind of part of our role as senior leaders. If we let all the kind of sand tasks, and I love that analogy, I'm going to keep using all the sand tasks coming in, you're never going to have the time and space to step back and see what's important. So that's kind of how I use it. And it also helps with saying no. So if I have my goals prioritized and something else comes in, I can kind of recheck, like, is this more important than what I already have prioritized? And if it isn't, then I can say no and kind of say, well, I think this is more important. This is more impactful for me to do right now. So having a reason to say no instead of just saying no. It also helps with that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a part of me that kind of wishes that instead of kind of calendars with time, we had kind of almost like blank sheets with almost like our energy bars. And we could kind of measure how much of my energy is this going to take? Do I have enough in my bar to take this on? But we're going to move to the next topic, which is about delegating, about having too many tasks. And I think, Maxi, can you tell us, what steps, and what alignment do you need before deciding what to focus on?
I guess the most important will be your time. Do you have time to work on this? And we touched on this already. Like maybe you think you have the time to the resources to focus on this task, and then you need to consider whether the work is important or not. And that might seem obvious, but it's not always easy to determine like the impact of a particular task. Again, you need to consider where the task is coming from. If it's an emergency, for example, like a production outage or like a big performance regression that needs your expertise, then that's an easy call to make. You should probably drop everything you're doing and go help with the emergency. But sometimes the task comes from somebody else or even from yourself, and you might automatically think that it's important. This happens a lot with tech dev, where you see something that is not optimal and people complain about it, and you want to fix it because we see something is broken, we want to fix it. But it is paying off tech dev is not always the right call. Like you need to consider each case individually. You need to be aware of what is the return you're gonna get from investing in fixing this tech dev. So confirming any assumptions that you might have about the project, I think is very, very important. And then the other thing to consider is whether the task is right for you. And this is going back to what you were saying, Blanca, about the energy bars. I really love Tanya Riley's framework of seeing like a dashboard for yourself where you have bars for your energy, your skills, your credibility, your quality of life. And each project that you take on will either drain or fill some of those resources, right? So, for instance, you might consider a new exciting project that will improve your skills and credibility, but it will drain your energy. But if you're already low energy, then maybe it makes more sense to take on something that is more slower impact, but also lower effort, so you can refill that bar first. And then once you consider all of that, I think it's a good idea to put your reasoning in a document explaining why you think it's important to focus on, to take on this task. This makes sure that just everyone is on the same page about the project.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess, once you've kind of realized that perhaps the task is not for you, I'm going to ask Sabrina, how being a StaffPlus role, you don't line manage people. So how do you get to delegating, or even get started without having that authority?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think for me, it starts with building relationships with managers and with engineers, for both yourself to get to know them, to understand what they care about, what their growth areas are, like what they're interested in, and also for them to get to know you and to build that trust. So what you want to avoid is, getting to know, like saying something, hi, you've never talked to you before, but here's something that I need you to do for me, please. That's going to be a lot harder. So you don't want to feel like you're the one kind of dumping on work on other people or other teams. And that takes time. And I think especially hard if you're a new senior leader in a company, like you'll have to wait to build those relationships. That will just take time. But really be mindful of that and create those connections, like one-on-ones or chats, coffee. Make sure that happens intentionally instead of just kind of waiting for that to happen as it comes. I think that's where I would start building relationships.
Thank you. Nayana, you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think that's like one is us individual contributors. We think we don't have to speak to people and we just have to focus on the tech and stuff. This is a classic example of where it's so much more important for us to do almost the same as what their people leader and their managers would be doing, but with an intent of just knowing them, not with an intent of like promotions or any of those things, just so that you know when someone's actually interested in something and it's the right thing for delegation. And also, I think it's nice for us to be, like Jeff mentioned about the whys, make the why more evident, where you're talking about not just the benefits of doing the task, but also what will it give to the person that you're delegating it to, how they could have more impact on the organization they are in, and that kind of stuff. And also something that I often do is hold off that itch to fix everything myself. That is the hardest. Like you feel like, oh, I know the problem. I know how to solve it. I'm just going to solve it. And it's that attempt to consciously stop yourself from doing something and stepping back and allowing people, and even sometimes they might fail and it's okay. Like they will learn through it. Like stepping back and allowing people to learn and develop is, I think, a key to delegation, and starting with delegation and stuff.
Thank you, Nayana. Yeah, you just mentioned something that I really like, which is when something that you cannot take on is actually someone else's growth opportunity. I think, Jeffrey, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to pile on an agreement about the importance of relationships as you become a staff level or higher, because it's the almost soft power. You can't make anyone do anything. You have to get them to want to do things, and that will bring them along. And having those relationships. Also, it sounds strange, but reading, like if you're working for a public company, then there'll be quarterly publishes of like or earnings. Like actually reading those things, which is boring. But reading them or listening to if your CEO does a presentation or an all hands and explaining the conditions, like actually listening to those and understanding and being able to speak to the challenges and the drivers that the leadership is talking about goes a long way towards getting that kind of alignment. Even if you don't have the conversations with the CEO, you can get aligned with their vision and discussing those things with the other people. Like, hey, look, the CEO just said this, it aligns with these goals that we're trying to achieve, but this other task over here, I don't know how it aligns. And maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. But that's a great way to have those conversations, because now you're not calling out you're not making it personal if you have a conversation about, I don't understand the alignment. You're now saying, this is what I heard, this is what we're doing, let's discuss it, or how do we reshape it?
I really like that you're kind of bringing people with you, just looking together at the issue, and it's not kind of like a confrontation. Cool. So Sabrina, now we're gonna go into more practical steps, perhaps, on how do you gain buy-in for a project from managers and teams? How do you go about this?
I mean, that's exactly what Jeffrey said about taking them on the journey. So it's not about just coming in of like, this is a problem you need to solve. It's how did I find out that problem? What is the value behind it? What is the impact behind it? Kind of get them understanding the problem really well, and the alignment with the business and the value behind it, and also how exciting it is to solve it, right? So everyone wants to have an impact and to feel like they are making things better. So it's just kind of tying those things together and taking them on that journey of that you've already been through, but helping them get to that kind of, yes, this is a problem I want to solve as well, and being excited about it. I think that really helps.
Thank you. And one thing we discussed in our kind of intro call was how a resilient culture is important for efficiency, and how kind of delegating ties in to this. Jeffrey, why is kind of a culture being resilient kind of important for being efficient, which was kind of the original kind of overarching theme of this?
The great example that I love is, and I don't remember who said it, but somebody said, documentation is a love letter you write to yourself, or because when developers, say, oh, I don't have time to write documentation. It's like, well, the person that you're hurting most is yourself, is future you. And the second person that you're hurting most is whoever has to take this over from you. And a resilient culture, you have empathy with the other developers, you have a relationship, and you care about what they're doing, and you don't just want that you succeed, you want everyone to succeed, you want the customer to succeed. And getting that empathy means that you will take an extra quarter step, an extra 15 minutes to make sure the documentation is right, or at least readable, so that future you or the other developers will get what they need out of it, and you'll be available to do that. And so if you have a resilient culture, you will be talking to each other more, and you will go down fewer rabbit holes that have no payout, right? If you're in an unresilient culture where you're siloed as an alternative, you might build these wonderful silos, but nobody ever reuses them. It doesn't matter, because it's, you might as well all be working at different companies, and then just somebody gluing the work together at the end.
That's very right. And Sabrina, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to what Jeffrey just said, or you think it's all said.
No, that all makes sense. And yeah, I think the resilience piece as well, it's related to growth and growing people around you, which we also talked about. So it's all connected.
Thank you. So Jeffrey, you just touched upon avoiding a culture where everyone is kind of working in silos. But as staff engineers, we're not embedded into single teams. Okay, we're kind of across teams. So there's a thing about making our work visible to people, and I was wondering, Diana, if you can tell us what approach you follow for raising that awareness about what is your work.
I think I would start with identifying who my stakeholders are, like how a product team would identify who their stakeholders are. As a principal engineer, who our stakeholders are. And for me, I would see that as your peers. That could be your senior directors across the organization, or like the delivery leads that you have. And then it's also like the product leaders, other principal engineers, lead engineers. So you kind of have a broad range of stakeholders that you would be working with. So first, identify them, have regular conversations with them, and be very explicit about what you're working on and what you're not working on as well. Like, it's very easy to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, and people have an assumption that you're also doing things that they have asked you to do, where you might not be doing it. So I think being more explicit about what you're not doing is quite handy to do. And also what I've done is often created forums where I could be sharing the progress I do. Like, I don't have team demos or the retrospectives and those kind of things that product teams go through, but still creating those forums where I could be sharing. And this often happens where a couple of principal engineers are working on a piece of a strategy or a technology thing. Find those places where you can get all of these stakeholders that are involved in it, and explain to them what you're working on. And this kind of helps with raising awareness, but it also has a hidden benefit of bringing people along on the journey. Like, we kind of spoke about bringing people along on the journey is like main kind of thing that we will have to do in our roles. And I think that's a nice thing that we can get out of talking about and showcasing our work on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to work on this for the next 6 months and then I'm going to come up with something. You can do it a lot more regularly and iteratively, so you can learn from what others have to say as well. I really like that writing a documentation is like a love letter for your future self. So yeah, document. That's how you would raise awareness for what you're working on and where you are in your cycle of iterations and stuff. And I find this the hardest, the art of written communication, and how do you get the right balance between what you write so that it's useful for everyone who's reading it versus what you write just because it's more of a brain dump. So I think getting that balance is quite crucial. So I also measure it by actually seeing how many people read my documents on a regular basis. So that is something that I do for raising awareness of what I'm working on and how to keep people around me updated with what kinds of initiatives I am interested in and working on and stuff.
Thank you, Nayana. I think I was thinking of another question based on, mentioning documentation. I was thinking how much detail you put into something so that it kind of stands the test of time, because otherwise you're going to be reviewing your own document and people are going to comment that you're going to keep like working on it forever and ever. But that's for another day. Sorry about that. I'm going to move on to Jeffrey and talking about, going again into the possibility of becoming your own silo. So how do you avoid being a StaffPlus role and just being there, but you don't have any visible impact? Because you could just be there.
Hey, you could be there. Going back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the why conversation, knowing what the lever that you're trying to push on is and being able to get numbers around it is critical for visibility. I do a lot of performance and scalability work. So if I know that something is running at 100,000 events an hour today, and I know that we need it to support, say, 1 million events an hour by next year, publishing every couple of weeks, here's where we are now based off of like the numbers in production, and here's our progress towards that number. That's great visibility, right? Instantly, I'm talking about the goal, I'm talking about the progress, and I'm not bogging it down in a long discussion of what we've changed or what we've done, because those are the details that as a staff I have to not obscure, but I not conflate. I don't need to. They don't need to go up the chain, right? The leadership doesn't care how I'm doing it, assuming I'm doing it in a decent way and not buying $1 million in tech debt. But they know where we need to go. They want to know where we are, and they want to know that we're making progress. And so it becomes a one sentence thing, and you can just say that on a weekly basis or even however often it's useful. And then because you've now cleared your own deck, it makes it easier to add other people in as visibility, because you can say, oh, we've moved the number from 100 to 120, and it was mostly this person's work. It gives you a lot of room to call out and raise up other people, that you've hopefully delegated to. But even if you've got people who have just working tangentially have also improved your goal, give them that boost and raise them up to leadership as well. And that helps, because then you'll become visible, you'll increase other people's visibility. And because people know exactly what you're talking about, right? Because it's very clear, you've got it down to a very crisp number. Anybody who's working tangentially on something that's going to touch that, they will start reaching out to you. You'll become visible. You will be the events per second guy or gal, or they, and people will start reaching out to you for your thoughts. They will invite you to the meetings when other people are going to touch something, because I've seen many systems where you've got 100 developers in them, and every single developer is making a reasonable trade-off for a little speed, for a big feature, for a bit of feature. And if you have 100 developers doing that, very quickly you have no speed and a lot of features, and nobody can use it, so the features don't matter. And so that's explaining what you're doing over and over again. That's how you keep your visibility.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I love you mentioning like using your own visibility to raise others. It's not about banging your own drum. It's about bringing everyone along. I was wondering if anyone would like to add anything here. Maxi, perhaps? No? If not, I'll move onwards. So we're going to move, I think it's the last topic for today, which is about tracking, measuring our impact, and how we kind of manage our time, which we all said at the start that is, it's a journey. So again, we'll go with Nayana and telling us how do you manage your workload when you're not part of a team, you don't have Jira, you don't have a project manager, doing all these things for you. What do you use?
When I started in this role, I remember having like to-do lists, and they just got longer and longer and depressing every day as to, oh, it feels like there's nothing for me to celebrate. It feels like I don't finish anything. It just keeps going on and on. And I did take your advice, Blanca, which is having some sort of a weekly planning and having some sort of reflections on a weekly basis or like at some regular intervals. And what I've moved on to more recently is something that Sabrina also touched on, which is have some sort of outcomes that you want to achieve over the next 6 months to a year. I mostly do a yearly thing where I come up with, this is what I would like to achieve within the organization in the next year. And they're very, very broad topics. So I can take them in the direction I think is right for the organization. And they're usually aligned with what the organizations, like within the Lego group, we have portfolio OKRs, which talk about what we want to achieve within the organization for the next year. So I kind of align my kind of outcomes to the portfolio OKRs itself, and then have a reflection of it every couple of months to make sure that's still the right thing for me to be working on. And then what I do is during the weekly and reflection times, I still have a to-do list, but it's a much smaller to-do list, which gets updated every week. And I have a few different lenses that I kind of apply on this to-do list these days. So there's the first one, which I kind of touched on in the beginning, which is those rocks, pebbles, and sand. Like I make sure that I have a couple of things that I'm working, which are like rocks, a few of them that are pebbles, and a few of them that are sands. The second kind of lens that I apply on is meeting time, thinking time, doing time. Like I remember being at one point where I was just I had a lot of things that I was doing, but not having enough time to just sit back and think of, is this the right thing for the organization? So now I kind of split it quite not evenly, it depends each week, but at least I make sure there's a spread between meetings, thinking, and doing. And also I kind of split it between organizational initiatives versus learning initiatives. Like as you get more senior, it becomes very hard to prioritize self-learning. And that's quite important as well, so that you make sure that you are up to par with everyone else. Like you're still an engineer at the end of the day. You still need to know how to write code, understand code, all of those things. So how do you keep up with it? So that's again part of how I kind of prioritize and make sure there's enough time for that. And something that doesn't get done for a few weeks, I kind of end up scrubbing it. It's like, probably it's not important. If it's important, it'll come back again. I can bring it back. So the to-do list, it's still a to-do list, and I do it on a weekly basis, but it's much smaller. So I can celebrate at the end of the week saying, oh, yes, I have made some progress, and I am moving in the right direction, kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I have started to do more diligent. And I do like structure. I think that's the reason I prefer, and different people probably visualize it differently. So but for me, this seems to work.
Thank you, Nayana. I'm going to take the tip of deleting things from my list because I have that kind of a backlog, and I just put it at the end. It's almost like my my trash, but in the end, it's not. It's always there. But I really like that approach. I think, for me, the more senior I've become, I kind of avoided planning until I couldn't avoid it. And once I started planning and adding some structure, I found that as I improved, I just felt like more free because I didn't have to think about my entire list or all my priorities. I was like, this week is for this thing, and the other thing is planned in the future. I don't have to worry about it now. But Maxi, we're gonna move to you now because I'm really interested to hear, how do you learn to limit the amount of work that you take on?
Yeah, I think the weekly reflection it's also like an incredible resource or a strategy that you can use. I find it super useful to keep a document where you list your current work in progress and you put percentages next to each one of your big projects at least. And you always say, like, here's where you will reserve some of your time for unexpected things that you can say yes to without feeling guilty that you're dropping something important. And I think using percentages next to each project is useful, especially if you can create like a little pie chart with how your time is slotted, because the next time you want to say yes to something, it kind of presents you with the reality that if you wanna slot 20% of your time for in a pie graph that is already 100% full, then that 20% that has to come out of somewhere. So it shows you your rocks. These are your rocks. This is your jar. How can you possibly fit another rock in here? And the other reason is that it keeps your priorities aligned with management, with stakeholders. If you keep this document updated, because maybe you started taking the lead on a very important project that was a top priority for the company. It took 100% of your time, but over time you started taking on some other things, and maybe that top priority project now is taking 20% of your time or 30%. If somebody sees that, will probably raise a flag. Why are you leading this project only dedicating 20% of your time to it? So that might be an indication that you have to start delegating some of your work or start saying no to some things.
Thank you. And because you were discussing weekly reflections, Sabrina, can you tell us how do you use those reflections to track your progress?
Yeah, so my process is very similar to Naya's of like weekly. Like I've set up half an hour for myself to look back in the week. So I look at specifically those goals that I set. So my rocks, 1 or 2 rocks that I have, and see what progress I made during the week. I write it down as well. I also have a document where I write down what I've done, and then I look ahead in the next week to pick 1 or 2 goals, like weekly goals for those rocks specifically. So it can vary depending on the week. So if I have a week I have more focus time, then I might pick up a goal that's a bit more ambitious, like bigger. Or if I know that I have lots of commitments, like interviews and things like that, meetings, then I might pick something smaller. But I always try to pick something that will move my rock goals a little bit further each week. So I feel like I have that feeling of progress and things moving along. So yeah, and try not to overcommit, as Maxi said, like making sure that there is space for the reactive work to happen, because it will happen. So yeah, it's kind of finding that balance between the two, but making sure that the goals and the rock projects are moving along.
Thank you. I like the mindset of acceptance. Things are going to come your way, so just create space. Maxi, you were talking about percentages and pie charts, and I was thinking, oh, metrics is kind of measuring things, and I thought, can you give us examples of metrics that you're using to measure the impact of projects? What are good examples that we use, or perhaps not so good?
Yeah, this is one of the hardest part, isn't it? Like measuring not only your impact as an individual, as a staff engineer, but also the impact of your projects. How well are they doing? How are they returning on the investment in a way? And it's really project dependent. Sometimes you have the benefit of having hard metrics available to you. I do a lot of work with performance or with velocity, and in those cases, you can track in a way. Time in this case, right? You can or events per second or whatever it is that you're trying to optimize, and that becomes easy. You can take a snapshot today, do your work, and then take a snapshot later, and you can actually see a number with your progress. But a lot of times you don't really have the benefit of these hard metrics, and you have to get more creative in a way. I really like what our DevX team at Help Scout do. That they survey engineers every 6 months or so, to try to get a signal of how things are going, what's working, what's not working, how things can be improved. And this is, of course, all subjective data. It's not hard metrics, but it gives them enough information to know that they're moving in the right direction, that things are progressing, and that they're not deteriorating.
Thank you. I think that they're good, but sometimes they can be a bit kind of personal in a way, because I think with different people measure things in a different way. So it depends how optimistic you're feeling on a given week to assign the numbers. I'm gonna kind of jump back a bit, because Jeffrey referenced kind of understanding business models, keeping up with like the big picture and the comms, and I think this is quite key when we're kind of thinking of metrics as well, and how important is understanding that business model that your company is for someone in a StaffPlus role. Why is it important?
It's super critical to StaffPlus role. Going back to the why reasoning, if you don't know how your company like how the business model actually works, it becomes very difficult to make sure that you're aligning your outcomes with it. I remember I once had a wonderful discussion with a senior, but not staff level engineer. This is around 2015 when Kubernetes first came out. And the engineer wanted to bring Kubernetes onto all of our infrastructure. And they were going to make the pitch, and they were going to tell the CTO that it was going to save us $20,000 a year because Kubernetes is more efficient. And I was like, no, don't say those words at all. Like, tell them about the auto scaling, tell them about the recovery, tell them about the blue-green deployments. And then at the end, if there's time, you can also mention that it's cheaper. But if you lead with, oh, we're going to save $20,000, they're immediately going to cut the project because that's not worth it. And just having some sense of how the business works and what things are, how much money is flowing from here to there and where and why becomes critically important just in terms of shaping how you discuss the projects and, how you present things. Because yes, if you present Kubernetes as something that's going to save $20,000 a year, well, that's nice, but no IT department's going to go for it. Kubernetes is great, but as another example, I worked at a mortgage lender, and simply giving loans to home buyers is about a third of the revenue for a mortgage lender. The other 2/3 is all kinds of interesting financial stuff and the things that they do with the loan once they've given it to a borrower. But if you don't know that, like if you think that, oh, we make loans and then we're done, you've missed out on 2/3 of the business. And most of the developers didn't even know that there was the entire back office side. And bringing that visibility goes a long way to explaining why, some crazy hoops that you have to jump through are there. It's like, oh, well, this enables us to do this other thing that the business makes a lot of money on.
That's right on point. So it's about focusing on the tasks that to make your business, stay on board. Okay, so we're gonna jump to that one last question, because there's certain tasks that they're not really easy to measure because maybe they're not that technical, but they're still part of the StaffPlus role. And I was wondering, Nayana, how do you prioritize these tasks? What are these tasks, and how do you measure yourself?
I think as an engineer, like we get to speak and work with lots of engineers in our day-to-day basis, but we're also part of leadership teams, and this puts us in a very unique place where we can be championing initiatives that can create that engineering culture that we want, the community culture that we want within the organization that people would love and want to be part of. There is a balance of how many of these kinds of initiatives you pick up on a regular basis. Like, I kind of have a general thing that I would usually pick one, maximum of 2 of these initiatives at any single point. And the way I would pick it is such that it should be something that would impact either the cluster that I am in, which is around 400 people that I work with, or the whole organization as a whole. So if it's smaller than that, I would prefer to delegate it to teams where it makes sense for them to create that engineering culture within their own parts of the organization, but then focus on those wider initiatives where I can go to the leadership team I work with saying, we need to sponsor this thing, or we need some money for this, or whatever it is. And this could be things like your mentoring program, or we want to have team rotations so that people learn from each other, and like those kind of, it's mostly to do with learning activities or like communities that you want to build and that kind of stuff. Measuring this is, as you said, Blanca, is so hard. It's like, it doesn't even come in your day-to-day routine of how you operate and work and stuff. Actively seeking for individuals who participate in this for feedback is probably how I would, and like I mostly go with qualitative feedback on these kind of things rather than quantitative feedback, because it's something that would impact the culture where you actually want to know how the organization is moving. And a lagging indicator that I use is look for those times when others are championing the kinds of things that you're talking about, like where I hear someone else saying, oh, mentoring is really great, we should all be getting involved, like those kind of, just looking for those signals where others are championing some of the things that you have started on is a great indicator of how you measure your success with these kind of things. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you, Nayana. I'm aware we're a bit over time, so now it's time to wrap up our panel. I see there's one open question. We'll take that to Slack, but let's please go around the room, and could each of you please share, just in a sentence, what is your top tip for someone who is trying to tackle their infinite to-do list, or who wants to get better at having those potentially challenging conversations when deciding what to focus on? I'm going to start in reverse alphabetical order now. So Sabrina, would you go first?
Sure. Yeah, my number one tip is what you said before, acceptance. Like there's never going to be enough time to do everything that you could possibly do. And it's not about prioritizing all the tasks that you could do. It's about finding the one or two things that are the most important right now and doing those. So accept that time is limited.
Thank you. Nayana?
I would probably call out be intentional of what you pick and avoid the temptation to underestimate the work that you have to do. Like we often think, oh, that's just a 2-minute job and we can finish it, but never anything is 2 minutes. So yeah, just being intentional and avoiding temptations for underestimating. That would be my tip.
Thank you. Maxi?
Yeah, my number one tip will be that you make sure that you're protecting your time by, again, like Diana was saying, being intentional about the projects or tasks that you agree on taking on. And that you always consider not only that the task is important, but also that is the right fit for you.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'm going to go with protecting your time as well. My tip is be fully prepared with a one-sentence explanation of what it is you're currently doing that just rolls off your tongue, and then follow that up with asking somebody to explain how what they're asking you to do fits in with that goal. And then if they can't or it doesn't, also be prepared, and you can have to practice this a couple of times, but thank you for letting me know. That is good information to have. Which makes it clear that you are not picking it up.
That's great. I think my tip is something that we all forget is grow your network before you need it. Okay, just connect with people, ask them what they like, go for a coffee, virtual meetups, whatever it is, get to know the people, okay, not just the work. And then one day you're going to start reaping the benefits. So thank you so much all for all the good insights in today's panel. We're all going to be heading to the Slack channel, okay, in hashtag StaffPlus. And please head there and we'll continue discussion and take the question that's been asked there. Thanks for joining, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.